Exposed. His heartwarming change when he discovered her incredible $2 million net worth. In the quaint town of Maplewood, where the sun dips down over the amber cornfields and neighbors happily greet each other in the streets, Joe's life took an unexpected turn that would spark the gossip mill like never before. Here he was, a 38-year-old mechanic covered in grease, everything he worked for tied to that modest garage he called home. Each day, he devoted himself to fixing cars, getting his hands dirty while providing for his loving family of four. Unbeknownst to him, friendly faces had turned to sideways glances. Folks from the upscale auto shop down the road often looked down their noses at him. But the rhythm of Joe's life became sweeter when he met Sarah, a soft-spoken single mother who barely raised her eyes as she passed him. Their paths crossed one day at the local diner, where they exchanged shy smiles over steaming cups of coffee. "You know," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "it's hard doing it alone." And in that moment, over shared stories of childhood dreams and the weight of parenting, an unbreakable bond formed. They became allies against the judgmental eyes of the upper crust, supporting each other at school events, cheering for their kids, and laughing through playdates. Everything shifted when Joe discovered a financial document amid routine paperwork at his shop. His heart sank as he realized that Sarah, the humble woman he admired, was a millionaire. $2 million. The numbers blurred in front of his eyes as envy twisted his gut. Confusion churned within him. How could someone so genuine, so ordinary, conceal such a treasure? Rumors spread like wildfire, and soon whispers of her wealth flooded the town, creating divisions Joe had never seen before. It felt like betrayal. Is it all an act, he wondered, wrestling with feelings that threatened to pull him apart. Joe felt a rift forming, tension simmering beneath their joyful friendship. Should he embrace a friendship that seemed so real, or let jealousy define it? As unfriendly whispers echoed around him, he found himself at a crossroads. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Joe grappled with his emotions, an unexpected storm surged through Maplewood, tearing apart the landscape and the already fragile sense of community. Houses were damaged, and fear gripped the hearts of the residents. Joe and Sarah watched as their friends and neighbors struggled to find shelter amidst the chaos. In the wake of destruction, the real test of their friendship unfolded. Would Joe find it in his heart to embrace Sarah's wealth, this hidden tool for good? Or would the fear of judgment push him away from the one person who understood his daily grind, who stood beside him during difficult moments? The storm raged on within and without, threatening to either cement their bond or leave it in tatters. As uncertainty loomed, Joe realized that the choice he faced could forever change them all. The winds howled outside, rattling windows and sending small debris flying through the empty streets of Maplewood. Joe stood in the far corner of his garage, tension tightening his chest. The storm had ripped roofs off homes and uprooted trees, but it was the turmoil inside him that felt most daunting. He could still hear the distant wails of sirens and the frantic murmurs of neighbors navigating the wreckage left by the storm. Sarah was supposed to be a part of this community, just like him. She had sat in the stands, cheering on their kids, lending an ear when he vented about his long days in the shop. But now, with her hidden wealth exposed to the light, the ground beneath him felt as if it had shifted. Is she giving in to this, he thought, shifting from foot to foot while wrestling with the talk buzzing through town. Wealth never defined a person, but neither did it erase judgment. The townsfolk who once praised her for her resilience now eyed her like a looming storm cloud. Would she rise above their whispers, or would the weight of their glances drown her in solitude? As darkness fell, Joe spotted Sarah trudging through the neighborhood, her silhouette illuminated by the soft glow of lamplights. He knew she'd been checking on others, trying hard to help despite her own challenges. Here was a woman who, even amidst chaos, seemed to radiate strength. Pausing him in his tracks, he recalled their conversation about overcoming hardships, and his heart twisted tighter at the thought of letting jealousy inhibit his connection with someone he had grown to admire deeply. Joe? The sound of her voice pulled him into the present. Sarah was only a few feet away now, her brow furrowed with concern, damp strands of hair clinging to her face. He took a step forward, tossing aside his internal battle. "Sarah, are you all right?" "I'm okay," she replied, her voice steady but tinged with fatigue. "I was just checking on Mrs. Tanner. Some of the seniors don't have anyone else." Her vulnerability struck him. In that moment, the difference in their lives seemed less significant. Here, amidst the debris and fear, stood the very woman who had managed to brighten his days with laughter and empathy. "If you need any help," he started, his voice trailing off. He glanced down, a flicker of pride washing over him, despite the unsettling truth of her wealth. "I appreciate that," she replied, her eyes searching his. "This isn't easy on anyone." They stood there, just for a moment, caught in the emotional undertow swirling between them. Would their friendship survive the harsh wind of judgment? Then he took a deep breath. "Let's work together. We can help clean up and check in on the neighbors." A smile broke through her weary facade. "I'd like that. I think we could do some good together." As the night unfurled around them, Joe felt something shift. The storm that raged outside started to feel more like an opportunity, a chance to build something stronger amidst the ruins of misunderstandings. But just as they turned to head down the street, a voice shouted from across the way, cutting through the quiet night. "What are you doing with her, Joe? You know who she really is, right?" The accusation hung in the air, stinging like the cold wind. Joe's heart pounded. Would he let the noise of others drown out the potential for something real? His gaze flickered to Sarah, who stood resolute beside him, fear mixed with defiance in her eyes. "Let's ignore them," she offered softly, but he could sense the turmoil beneath her calm exterior. "No," he said firmly, taking her hand in solidarity. "This is where we begin." And as they started down the darkened road, Joe felt the weight of their journey shift. Would they find the strength to face the town together, fighting off the storm of rumors? Or was this confrontation only the beginning of a deeper struggle for acceptance and unity? The next streets were illuminated by a sparse line of flickering street lamps, their yellow glow casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and bend with them. Joe felt the grip of Sarah's hand in his, a physical tether amidst the chaos of emotions. They walked together, each step forward a gentle defiance of the storm and the bitter words that had been tossed at them. "What do you think they mean?" Sarah finally asked, her voice a low murmur, the bravado starting to crack. "When they say who she really is, I mean, there's really nothing hidden about me. I'm just me." Joe shifted, trying to control the swells of anger rising inside him. "It doesn't matter what they think," he replied sharply, then softened. "You know that, right? You're not defined by what others say." "But it's hard." She paused, her breath hitching for a moment. "I wanted to help. I thought that by being here, I'd find my place in this town. But now?" Her words faded into the chilly night. He could see it in her eyes, fear, vulnerability, and a longing for acceptance. It gnawed at his heart, and he wanted nothing more than to shield her from the harshness of judgment. "Hasn't this place seen enough hardship?" he asked, attempting to peel back layers of frustration. "We all know what it's like to struggle. Rich or poor, we're all part of this community. We need to remind them." Their footsteps halted in front of Mrs. Tanner's house. The once vibrant garden lay in disarray, branches scattered like forgotten memories. But the door to the little blue house opened, and Mrs. Tanner stepped out, clutching a weathered shawl around her shoulders. Her eyes lit up with the sight of them. "Joe, Sarah, thank you for coming. I was just about to call someone," she said, but then her voice waned. "I didn't know who would help me after." Her words trailed off, the storm in the background echoing the confusion around them. "We're here to help," Sarah said, stepping forward with newfound resolve. "What do you need?" The old woman's grateful smile was like a ray of sunlight breaking through clouds. The roof is leaking, and there's debris everywhere. It's all so overwhelming. Joe and Sarah exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They could start small, piece by piece, cleansing the community of its wounds. As they stepped inside the house, the interior was dimly lit, and the scent of dust and history filled the air. Joe began examining the roof, while Sarah gathered some supplies, her movements steady and purposeful. Working side by side brought a sense of teamwork that dulled the noise of the outside world. Hours blurred into one another, but amidst that closeness, Joe felt a surge of admiration for Sarah. She didn't flinch when she climbed on the ladder or when she struggled with heavy bags of debris. She became a picture of determination, and with each laborious task, his feelings deepened. Just as they finished clearing the worst of the mess, laughter echoed from outside. Children were playing in the street, their voices ringing out like bells over the hum of the evening. Life persisted, despite the storm's aftermath. It tugged at Joe's heartstrings, reminding him of how community built resilience. But then, everything fell silent. A car rolled slowly down the street, its headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. Shadows shifted in the glow, and Joe recognized the familiar figure of Tom, a longtime neighbor and a voice of scorn in their town. "Look at you two," Tom shouted, a harsh edge to his voice. "Playing hero while you should be ashamed of yourselves." Joe felt Sarah stiffen beside him, the previous warmth dissipating into tension. "Why don't you have a seat, and let's talk about this?" Joe tried. The confrontation was there, on the brink. Would this moment shatter the fragile trust they'd begun to build? Would the facade of community hold up under scrutiny? Or would it crack wide open before them? As the evening air grew heavy with unspoken words, Joe and Sarah braced themselves for what was to come. The storm outside may have passed, but the biggest battle was yet to unfold. The words hung in the air like a dense fog, suffocating and oppressive. Joe could feel his heart race, a palpable beat against the silence. Sarah's grip tightened on his hand, and he could see the determination flickering back to life in her eyes. But Tom's scorn lingered like an unwelcome aura. "Shame?" Joe shot back, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "Shame is pretending people don't need help when they do. You can't just sit there and throw stones, Tom." Tom leaned against his car, arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "Playing the savior will only get you in more trouble. You think it's that simple? They're just making things worse for her." His gaze shifted to Sarah, piercing and judgmental. "Tell me, why are you really here?" Joe's stomach twisted. The night had felt laden with promise, just the two of them against the world, but now it suddenly felt exposed, stripped down to the bone. "Sarah is here because she cares about this community," Joe retorted, forcing every ounce of conviction into his words. Sarah stepped forward, a spark igniting. "I thought I could be part of this town, but it seems it only reveals the way people fight each other instead of coming together. Why can't we just help?" Tom scoffed, shaking his head. "Oh, the idealistic outsider wants to save the day, but this town doesn't need saving. You're just a distraction." The wind picked up, and his voice carried a bitter root of disdain. "Maybe you're the distraction," Joe snapped, his own frustration bubbling over. "You're just afraid to let anyone in. You're terrified of what it might mean if this town actually functions like a community for a change." Silence fell, and Joe could see something shift in Tom's eyes, a fleeting vulnerability exposed amidst the bravado. But he quickly masked it with a scoff, straightening his posture. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Do you even know what time it is?" Sarah interjected, her voice rising. "The world is a mess, and you're here judging two people trying to make a difference? Just because your heart is hardened doesn't mean ours has to be." Moving in close, she passed Tom by and walked towards the edge of the street where the children's laughter had faded into uncertainty. Joe followed, half expecting Tom to retreat, but that wasn't the response he got. "Just wait," Tom called out, a hint of warning in his tone. "You'll see. People like you, they'll turn on you when they've had their fill. No one wants the truth." What truth? Joe wondered aloud, frustration bleeding into curiosity. Was there something he didn't understand? Was this town's history thicker than he knew? But before he could dwell on the doubt, Sarah turned back to him, her expression momentarily softened. Let's not focus on him. What matters is what we're doing, right? We can't let that define us. With a resolute nod, Jo held her gaze. She was right. The only way forward was through action and resilience. Yet, as they stood there, the weight of Tom's words hung ominously over them. If they pushed on, what backlash awaited them? After a moment, they moved away from the confrontation. Each step was a pulse of defiance, a silent agreement to not let hatred win. But as they ventured deeper into the quiet nostalgia of the neighborhood, a nagging question brewed in Jo's mind. What truth was Tom hiding? As the distant sounds of life began to fill the air again, Jo and Sarah realized they were on the brink of uncovering something bigger than themselves, something that could either heal or tear apart their fragile community. What lay beneath the surface of their small town's history? Would they have the courage to face it head-on? The quiet of the neighborhood felt different now. As they walked, Jo could almost hear the pulse of the town beneath his feet, a blend of whispered secrets and memories. The night that had once seemed so promising now carried a weight that felt too heavy to bear. Sarah's fingers intertwined with his again, a silent reminder that they were in this together. "You okay?" she asked, glancing at him sideways. Her voice carried a warmth that provided a flicker of comfort. "I don't know, Sarah," he admitted, taking a deep breath. Tom's words, they linger. What does he know that we don't? I thought we were making progress. Sarah stopped and turned to face him, her brow furrowed. She took a moment before responding, her voice steady and gentle. "We've come too far to let one person's negativity stop us. We're here because we believe in something bigger. If Tom can't see it, that's on him." That resolve in her eyes sparked something in him. He didn't want to let despair take root. "Right," he said, straightening his shoulders. "So, what's the plan? How do we show this community that we care?" Sarah smiled, a genuine spark lighting her features. "I've been thinking about that." She hesitated, clearly gathering her thoughts. "We need to make a connection with the families around here, to understand their stories. Maybe we can organize a community event, something that brings people together. A block party?" Jo suggested, his spirits lifting at the thought. He could picture the tables filled with food, laughter spilling out into the streets, kids playing tag while their parents watched with smiles. That could work. Remember last summer's potluck? Everyone showed up for that. Exactly. Sarah's enthusiasm was infectious. But we have to add personal touches. It can't just be food. Maybe we can have booths for the kids to have fun, art displays from local talent, and even a little history corner. Good idea. That could help people like Tom see the town differently. Jo's excitement grew as they played off each other's ideas. And we could invite some nearby musicians to perform. Nothing like music to bring people together. As they brainstormed, laughter bubbled between them, coaxing the shadows from earlier into something lighter. It felt like they were mapping out a future, a flicker of hope dancing in the twilight. Suddenly, Sarah grew quiet. Jo followed her gaze to a weathered house at the end of the street. "That's the old Wilson place," she murmured, almost to herself. He turned to see the overgrown yard, the peeling paint, the shattered welcome sign that hung askew. "I heard it's been abandoned for years. Do you think we should check it out?" "Maybe there are stories waiting to be uncovered," Sarah responded, her curiosity palpable. "And if we're serious about bringing everyone together, we should know where we're starting." "Let's do it," he replied, adrenaline sparking again. Hand in hand, they walked towards the house, both nervous and thrilled at what they might find. But as they drew closer, the unease from earlier returned, creeping into Jo's heart. What if the house held more than just memories? What if, instead of treasures, they uncovered the town's hidden pain? They stepped onto the creaky porch, and Jo's heart beat faster. Would this journey lead them to answers or deeper mysteries? As they pushed the door open, a cloud of dust danced in the air, settling around them like fog. What would they discover about the Wilsons and about their town? In that moment, everything felt at stake. The weight of history pressed on their shoulders. Would they be ready to face whatever came next? The door creaked open, revealing a darkened hallway lined with faded wallpaper and shadowy corners. Dust motes floated like tiny ghosts in the beam of moonlight that spilled through the grimy window. Joe hesitated, caught between excitement and a sense of foreboding. "Are you sure we should be doing this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah stepped inside, her determination shining brighter than the darkness around them. "We have to know. We can't move forward without understanding the past." Joe watched her take a deep breath, steadying herself as she walked deeper into the house. Against the backdrop of dust and decay, her resolve was a vibrant contrast. Following her, Joe felt the air grow heavier, charged with a past he couldn't quite grasp. "What if we find something unsettling?" he asked, his heart thudding against his ribs. "What if—" "Joe," she interrupted, turning to face him, "we can't be afraid of what we might find. We need to be brave, together." Her eyes held his, warm and fierce. In that moment, he wanted to believe her. They entered a living room cluttered with remnants of the Wilson family, a tattered couch with springs poking through the fabric, a dusty coffee table stacked with old magazines, and family photos hanging askew on the walls. Joe felt like an intruder in someone else's history. "Look at these," Sarah said, pointing to a faded picture of a smiling couple with 2 children. They looked so full of life, a sharp contrast to the decay surrounding them. Maybe these were the people who— "We can't ignore their stories." As they moved further into the house, pieces of the past began to reveal themselves. A box of toys lingered in a corner, each toy more worn than the last, begging to be played with again. A faded quilt lay draped over the back of a chair, its intricate patterns telling stories of warmth and family gatherings. Joe picked up a small wooden car, its paint chipped but still vibrant. I wonder who played with this? The thought tugged at his heartstrings. Life had once bloomed here, he realized. The echoes of laughter seemed to linger, brushing against the edges of silence. Sarah turned her attention to the attic door, its aged wood beckoning them. "I bet there's more up there," she said, excitement sparkling in her eyes. "Let's see if there's anything we can find that tells us more about these people." Joe hesitated, memories of Tom's warning creeping in again. What if we find something we don't want to know? Or what if we discover something that brings the community closer? Sarah countered, her enthusiasm unwavering. "It's about understanding where we came from." With a shared sigh, they opened the creaky attic door, the hinges protesting as they ventured into the musty space. Dust blanketed everything, thick enough to leave a layer on their fingertips. Old boxes labeled with family names sprawled across the room, tempting them to rip the seams of forgotten time. As they rummaged through the boxes, each item told a piece of the Wilson story. A graduation cap, a faded wedding dress, even a set of golf clubs. Each discovery ignited curiosity. But then, buried beneath dusty books, Joe stumbled across something heavy, wrapped in tattered sheets, something that made his hands tremble as he reached for it. The weight of it felt significant, a break in the otherwise forgotten rhythm of family memories. What could this be? The answer lay just beneath the surface, waiting to shift everything he thought he knew. As he pulled the cloth away, Sarah's gasp echoed around the attic, sending a chill down his spine. What is that? His heart raced. What had they uncovered that could change their understanding of the town forever? Would this revelation pull them closer or send them spiraling apart? "Joe, please, what did you find?" In that moment, uncertainty hung thick in the air, ready to explode. Would they grasp the truth, or would the past swallow them whole? Joe held his breath as he unfurled the cloth, revealing an ornate wooden box adorned with intricate carvings. It looked older than anything they had found so far, like it had been untouched for decades. The box was locked, its mechanism worn but still intact, teasing them with the promise of secrets contained within. He felt Sarah lean closer, curiosity shimmering in her eyes. "What do you think is in there?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if raising it would shatter the fragile moment. "Maybe it's full of family heirlooms or some kind of treasure," Joe replied, trying to keep the excitement in his voice steady. The thought of riches made his stomach flutter, but deep down he felt a creeping anxiety. What if it was something darker? Sarah's fingers brushed against the box's surface, tracing the carvings. Or something that explains why they left. Her words hung in the air like a foreboding shadow. Gingerly, Joe turned the box over in his hands, searching for a way to open it. A small latch glinted in the dim light, but it wouldn't budge. Frustration bubbled inside him. "We need a key, don't we? Just our luck." "Or maybe we can pry it open," Sarah suggested, eyes gleaming with determination. In her presence, he felt the chain of fear loosening, giving way to an unshakable resolve. "Okay, let's try." Joe grabbed one of the loose nails from the floor and began to work it into the latch. With each twist, the box felt heavier, as if the history it held was pressing inward. Would they be ready for whatever it was about to reveal? Just then, a faint creak echoed through the attic, making both of them freeze. Joe's heart thundered in his chest. "Did you hear that?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder as if the darkness might hold the answer. "Probably just the house settling," Sarah whispered, but the way she squinted into the shadows betrayed her own apprehension. He returned to the lock, determination surging through him again. With a final twist, he felt the latch release with a quiet click. "Got it!" He lifted the lid, and dust particles swirled into the shaft of light. Inside the box lay stacks of letters tied neatly with a fraying ribbon, and an envelope marked, "To be opened in case of my absence." "Letters?" Joe murmured, lifting the bundle gently. "What do you think they're about?" Sarah peered over his shoulder. "Maybe they're love letters or family updates. They might even explain the mystery behind the family's departure." The word absence hit Joe like a ton of bricks. He was struck by the idea that the Wilsons had left for a reason, something that might still echo in the town today. It ignited the familiar itch of doubt within him. What if it's something bad? What if... "Then it's our responsibility to know," Sarah said, her voice steady. "We can't pretend this isn't part of our history." Her conviction solidified his own. He knew that whatever lay inside these letters would change everything they thought they knew about the Wilsons, and possibly even themselves. "Okay, let's read a few," he finally said, his pulse racing with a mixture of anticipation and dread. As they began to sift through the letters, each word tugged on the strings of their hearts, revealing a story of love, loss, and buried pain. The history of the Wilson family unfolded like a tender yet haunting melody, resonating deeply within them. Walls of the attic. But just as Joe thought he understood their story, he flipped to the last letter, the urgency of its words taking his breath away. "After my death." In that instant, Joe felt the ground beneath him shift. What had he unearthed, and how would it change everything? As they hunched over the delicate pages, Sarah whispered, "Joe, do you think we're prepared for what's coming next?" Joe's hands trembled slightly as he read the last line of the letter again. "After my death." It echoed in his mind, heavy with implications. He had unearthed a truth that could fracture the normalcy of their everyday lives. "What does it say?" Sarah leaned closer, her breath warm against his ear. The anxiety in her voice matched his own heartbeat. He hesitated, the words blurring as he struggled to process the weight of them. "It's a warning about something, someone," he stammered. His voice shook slightly, revealing the rising tide of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "It's about unfinished business, the kind that could haunt a person long after they're gone." "What do you mean?" she asked, her eyes wide with concern. It was as if the warm attic air had turned cold. Joe swallowed hard, the fear pooling in the pit of his stomach. This was beyond a mere family mystery. It was about consequences, hidden shadows, and perhaps something far darker than he had imagined. It mentions a dispute. It seems like they were running from something. What could be so bad they would leave everything behind? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper, her own dread reflecting in his eyes. As Joe read further, he found himself sinking deeper into the story. The words painted vivid images of turmoil and uncertainty. The family had faced relentless struggles, the kind that twisted bonds and left scars. "It speaks of a betrayal," he murmured. Someone close to them turned against the family. Sarah gasped, her fingers clenching the edge of the box. What if that person is still out there? The thought made them both shiver. They glanced around the dim attic, as if shadows might hold the answer. Despite the distance from the troubles of the past, a dark thread seemed to tie them to the present. "Do you think we should put these letters back?" Joe suggested, alarm coursing through him. "Maybe it's better to leave the past buried." "No," Sarah said firmly, shaking her head, her resolve shining through despite her fear. "We can't ignore this. We have to understand. This isn't just their history. It's part of ours now." Joe admired her determination. It propelled him forward, igniting a flicker of bravery flickering in the shadows of his doubt. "Okay, but we have to be careful. We don't know what we're getting into." She nodded, her eyes searching his. Whatever this was for them, it can't stay hidden anymore. With a deep breath, Joe focused back on the letters. As they continued reading, the accompanying ache of the words wrapped around their hearts, each letter revealing more about the Wilsons' lives, their hopes, fears, and moments of despair. The room felt heavier with each page they turned, and Joe couldn't shake the sensation that they were on the precipice of something monumental. Finally, they came upon the last letter in the stack, tucked away beneath the others like a hidden gem. The envelope bore no markings, yet somehow it felt more significant than all the rest. "Should we open it?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with equal parts excitement and fear. Joe hesitated. What if it changes everything? What if it reveals the very thing we dread discovering? "Then we face it together," Sarah replied, threading her fingers through his. As he tore the envelope open, an undeniable sense of foreboding washed over him, a wave of apprehension mixed with the thrill of uncovering potential truths. What awaited them inside? Would this last letter bring closure or unleash chaos? With bated breath, Joe pulled out the neatly folded page, heart pounding like a drum. As he began to read, darkness loomed around them, and he could almost feel the weight of the past pressing against their shoulders. "Joe," Sarah whispered, the tension coiling tightly between them. And just when he thought he was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, a sudden noise pierced through the silence of the attic, causing their hearts to leap. "What was that?" Joe's voice cracked, the tension mounting once again. "Something or someone might be listening," Sarah said, eyes wide with fear. In that moment of uncertainty, another question sprang to life between them. Were they truly ready for what this journey would uncover, and could they handle the truth together? Joe's heart was racing, the bookish dust of the attic swirling around them like an unforgiving storm. He turned to Sarah, searching for reassurance in their shared fear. "What if we're not alone?" The words barely fell from his lips when the silence thickened, stretching between them like a taut wire ready to snap. "Maybe it's just the house settling," Sarah suggested, though her voice quivered. It was a desperate attempt to dismiss the chill creeping down her spine. They were surrounded by relics of a past they hardly understood, far removed from their ordinary lives. "Yeah, or maybe it's something worse," Joe muttered, his mind racing through the implications of the letter. What did it mean for them? He couldn't shake the feeling that by opening this last letter, they had opened a door that might not close again. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed from below, jolting Joe out of his thoughts. He and Sarah exchanged a wide-eyed glance. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice rising in pitch. Let's check it out, Joe said, forcing a tone of bravery he didn't feel. It was almost instinctive, a protective impulse blooming in his chest. With a tentative breath, he led the way toward the narrow staircase leading down to the first floor. Every creak of the stairs seemed to echo the worry pounding in his head. As they descended, shadows danced in the dim light, making every step feel heavier. The atmosphere was thick with suspense, and the house felt alive, as if it were holding its breath alongside them. "Are you sure we should?" Sarah whispered, hesitating at the bottom step. "Why not? It's better to confront whatever it is," Joe replied, trying to sound convincing. He had to make a choice, and he'd rather be afraid and face something than be hunted by an invisible terror. They moved into the hallway, every corner concealing darkness. Joe's heart raced as he approached the living room. A soft glow slipped under the door like a warning beacon. He pushed it open. The room was empty, but the flickering light came from an old lamp, casting eerie shapes on the walls. Before him lay a folded note placed conspicuously on the coffee table, as if it had been waiting for their return. "Another letter?" Sarah breathed, stepping cautiously beside him. "No name this time," Joe said, picking it up. His fingers grazed the surface, the texture of the paper sending a wave of anticipation through him. "Open it," she urged gently, her voice a steadfast anchor amidst their swirling confusion. He unfolded it slowly, anxiety bubbling to the surface. The handwriting was elegant, starkly different from the previous letters. As his eyes scanned the sentences, the words coalesced into a chilling message that sent a tremor through his soul. "It's from someone who knew my family, someone who warned them of danger." Joe's hands shook as he passed the letter to Sarah, watching her expression transform from curiosity to alarm. "What kind of danger?" she asked, her brows knitting together. "Something about debts left unpaid," he revealed, voice dropping as he absorbed the implications. "They were being hunted, Sarah. They didn't just leave, they ran." Her gasp pulled him back to her face, which was a mixture of disbelief and fear. What if that danger is still here? What if we're... A crash echoed from the kitchen, shattering the tense silence. "Stay close," Joe urged, stepping in front of her like a human shield. "Whatever this is, we need to confront it." As they cautiously moved toward the sound, Joe's mind raced with thoughts of betrayal, unfinished business, and the depths of fear that had taken root in the Wilson legacy. Could it be that the shadows of the past were manifesting still? They reached the kitchen door, their hearts pounding in unison. Joe paused, steadying his breath. What if it's just an animal? But even as he spoke, doubt flickered like the dying light in the lamp. Sarah squeezed his arm, her grip a blend of encouragement and trepidation. What if it's more? With a surge of resolve, Joe pushed the door open, revealing the unknown. What awaited them in the dim light of the kitchen? Was it merely an echo of the past, or had the danger come to their doorstep? In the kitchen, a cloud of tension hung thick as Joe and Sarah stepped over the threshold. The beam of light from the living room spilled into the small space, illuminating the remnants of the Wilson home. Untouched dishes in the sink, a half-eaten apple on the counter, and the stark emptiness of a life once filled with activity. But then, just beyond the table, something caught Joe's eye. The back door swung open, creaking on its hinges, and it became clear. Shadows had taken form. "Hello?" he called, taking a cautious step inside. The air was thick with something more than dust, almost electric. It felt like the remnants of a storm settled deep within these walls. "Close it," Sarah whispered urgently, pointing at the darkening yard outside. There was something lurking there, the night seeming to stretch and curl around a figure just beyond view. Before Joe could react, a muffled sound came from the shadows, an echo of footsteps on the porch. Fear gripped them both, but courage surged in Joe. "Stay behind me," he said, his hand outstretched. He stepped toward the door, the floorboards creaking beneath him. There was a weight in the air, as if something significant was about to unfold. With a swift motion, he swung the door shut, closing out whatever danger loomed in the dark. As he turned back, a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall man with weathered features and tired eyes, wearing an old beaten jacket. "I followed you," he said, voice low and gravelly. "You need to stop digging." Joe froze, a wave of uncertainty crashing over him. "Who are you?" The man hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. "I'm someone who knew the Wilsons," he said, glancing nervously around. "And you're in over your heads." Sarah stepped forward, her courage cutting through the fear. "What do you know? Why did they leave?" The man's eyes flickered at the sound of their questions, shadow curling around his frame. They were in trouble, debt, secrets, lies that chased them. They thought they could escape, and they didn't want anyone else involved. "But we are involved," Joe countered, his voice full of defiance. "We can't just stand by and let the past dictate the present. Don't you understand? We have to help." "You don't know who you're dealing with," he said urgently, edging backward as if the weight of his revelation had physically altered the space between them. "You're stirring a pot best left closed. This town," he paused, searching their eyes for understanding, "it has its ghosts, legacies that can push people to harm." "That's why we're here," Sarah said boldly. "This town can't keep running from its past. We need to find closure for the Wilsons and for our community." A flicker of recognition crossed the man's face, but it quickly faded into caution. "That's dangerous thinking. These threads are woven tight. You pull one loose, and you might unravel everything." Joe felt the chaos rising within him. "Maybe that's exactly what this town needs, the truth. Don't you want to help them? To break the cycle?" The man's face seemed to soften just a fraction. "Truth isn't always a friend. It can cut just as deep as any knife." "I don't care if it's painful," Joe shot back, determination shining in his gaze. "We're not afraid of the truth." "Then know this," the man replied, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "If you want to confront the past, be ready to face it, together. But once that door is opened, you might not like what comes through." His warning hung thickly in the air, and for a moment, silence enveloped them like a dark embrace. Joe's heart thumped loudly, the weight of their decision bearing down upon him. But there was clarity there, too. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, taking Sarah's hand firmly in his, "we face it together. We'll show this town that community means sharing both burdens and joy. We'll finish what the Wilsons couldn't." The man studied them closely, and for the first time, a glimmer of reluctance turned into something like admiration in his eyes. "You aren't the only ones who've been touched by their story. You may be the first to heed their call." He glanced at the door, the outside world still swirling with uncertainty. Joe could feel the gravity of their journey surrounding them, the darkness beyond, just an echo of what they had discovered, the fear and pain buried in their town's very roots. "You don't have to do this alone," the man said, his voice straining but steady. "If you need help, don't hesitate to reach out." With that, he turned to leave, blending back into the shadows from which he came. Sarah's hand tightened in Joe's, their silent unity forging an unbreakable bond. The weight of truth now lay clearly before them, a path not for the faint of heart. Joe stood in resolute silence, the fire of determination igniting anew within him. "No more running," he said, voice strong and sure. "It's time for Maplewood to face what it's long ignored." As they followed the man's fading figure into the darkness surrounding them, they felt the weight of history cradling their resolve. Together, they'd confront whatever lay ahead. And in that moment, Joe and Sarah did not just hold hands. They held the heart of a community ready for transformation. Outside, the flickering stars bore witness to their commitment. No storm could drown out the light they brought, and together they would rise from the ashes of the past, stronger than before. In the silence that followed, hope flourished anew in Maplewood. Life would continue, fresh roots sinking deep into ground fertilized by struggle. Now is the time for you to join this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that inspire change. Leave a like now. Your support matters. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this ending. We want to hear from you. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation. This is the moment to show your support, so don't wait, not even 1 more second to share. Only true fans understand the power of community. Let's grow together.